I used to believe that marriages ended with dramatic moments, shouting matches, slammed doors, ultimatums delivered in quivering voices. After 7 years with my wife, I thought I understood what real conflict looked like. What I didn't expect was how quietly destruction could arrive, how 5 simple phrases, dropped casually over the span of a week, could unravel everything I thought we had. It started on a Monday morning that looked like any other. I was in the kitchen making coffee, half awake, thinking about the projects I needed to finish at work. She walked in dressed for her office job, scrolling through her phone as though the world behind the screen mattered more than anything around her. She didn't look at me. She didn't smile. She didn't even acknowledge I existed until, with the same energy someone might use to comment on the weather, she said, "I've been thinking. Maybe we just settled for each other." The phrase hit harder than anything she'd ever said. I froze mid-pour, the smell of coffee suddenly nauseating. I asked what she meant. She finally looked up, shrugged, and answered, "Nothing. Forget it." But I couldn't forget it. Not that morning, not that afternoon, not while staring at spreadsheets in my office pretending to focus. The phrase looped in my mind like a broken recording, settled for each other. Was that what 7 years meant to her? Was I just a placeholder in the life she wished she'd lived? It didn't feel like an impulsive comment. It felt intentional, calculated, like she was testing something. Tuesday proved that theory. We were having dinner takeout from the Thai place we used to love. A quiet meal, the kind married couples fall into when routines replace real conversation. Then she said, while looking directly at me, "I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd made different choices." Nothing subtle, nothing vague. I asked, "Different choices like what?" She gave a small smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes and carries more contempt than warmth. "Oh, career, location, relationships, everything. Relationships." She emphasized that word deliberately. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but surprisingly, it wasn't hurt. It was anger. Not loud, not explosive, just a quiet realization that something was shifting, and she was the one pushing it. So I replied, "Well, it's never too late to make different choices." Her smile flickered. For the first time in months, I saw her genuinely thrown off. Wednesday came with the third blow. We were talking about the weekend, something simple. I'd suggested visiting my parents. We hadn't seen them in months. She sighed dramatically and said, "I can't keep pretending to enjoy things I don't care about anymore." This one cut deeper than the others. She wasn't talking about my parents. Not really. She was talking about us, our traditions, our shared memories, our life. Pretending. That word stayed with me more than anything else she'd said. I asked her how long she'd been pretending. She tried to backpedal, to soften the edges, but it didn't work. The mask had already slipped. By Thursday, it became obvious her comments weren't random outbursts. They were steps in a pattern, a sequence, a strategy. That night, while we were getting ready for bed, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "Sometimes I look at couples who are actually happy and wonder what that feels like. Not we, not our happiness." She brushed me out of the sentence entirely. She expected me to argue, defend myself, chase validation. Instead, I told her the truth, or at least the truth I felt in that moment. "Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing lately." That one caught her off guard more than anything else. She stared at me as if she couldn't understand why her words no longer pierced the way she intended, as if she suddenly couldn't tell which of us was supposed to be losing ground. Then came Friday, the final blow in her week-long campaign. We were drinking coffee, the same way we had on Monday, when she delivered her last phrase with unnerving calm. "I think we both know this isn't working anymore." And just like that, everything became clear. The Monday comment, the Tuesday insinuation, the Wednesday confession, the Thursday exclusion. All of it had been leading to this moment. She wanted out, but she wanted to walk away clean without taking responsibility, without admitting fault. She wanted me to be the one who snapped, who suggested divorce, so she could play the wounded partner who tried her best. But instead of crumbling, instead of giving her the reaction she'd scripted, I set down my coffee, looked at her calmly, and said, "You're absolutely right. This isn't working anymore." It was the first time since this started that she didn't know what to say. She froze, waiting for an argument that wouldn't come. I stood, kissed the top of her head, and thanked her for the clarity, because in that moment, more than any moment in our 7 years of marriage, I finally saw her. Not the version I'd built in my head, not the woman I thought I'd married, but the one who stood in front of me now, calculating, distant, and convinced she was the only one capable of steering the outcome. What she didn't expect was that I had been paying attention. She thought her words were carving my downfall, but they were giving me something else entirely: a map, a guide, a clear signal that I needed to wake up, step back, and take control before she rewrote the story into something that made me the villain in my own marriage. She didn't understand it then, but she would, very soon. The Monday after our conversation, the one where she casually declared our marriage wasn't working, I walked into the week with a different mindset. I stopped reacting emotionally. I stopped assuming good intentions. Instead, I started observing, not like a jealous husband or someone desperate to win her back, more like a man who finally realizes he's been walking blindfolded through his own life and decides to take off the cloth. It didn't take long to notice how different things were once I started paying attention. Her phone, for example, used to be an afterthought. She'd leave it on countertops, let it buzz with notifications she didn't care to check, even ask me to read her messages while driving. Now, it never left her hand. Screen always face down. New lock screen, new passcode. Every tone, text, call, alert made her tense just enough to betray how much it mattered. Tuesday night, during dinner, her phone buzzed on the table. She nearly lunged for it, caught herself halfway, forced her movements into something slower, more controlled. But the instinct had already revealed everything. She glanced at the screen for 1 second before locking it again. "Work stuff," she said, not even attempting to make it believable. "At 8 p.m.? I asked mildly, cutting into my steak. "You know how it is," she replied far too quickly. I did know how it was. Her job didn't require late-night emergencies. The company barely sent emails after hours, let alone texts. But I didn't call her on the lie. I simply filed it away with everything else I'd been collecting. Wednesday morning, her phone rang while she was in the bathroom getting ready for work. It was sitting on the nightstand near me. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't searching for anything. I simply glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Nothing unusual by itself, but when she came out and saw the missed call, her reaction said everything. For a brief moment, she couldn't hide, her face went pale before she regained her composure. "Probably spam," she said too casually, picking up the phone and taking it straight back into the bathroom with her. A few seconds later, I heard the faint sound of her checking voicemail. When she came back out, I was sitting on the bed, fully dressed, watching her with an expression I knew would unsettle her just enough. "Everything okay?" I asked with a tone bordering on amusement. "Fine," she snapped, then softened her voice immediately. "Sorry, just stressed about the presentation today." "What presentation?" I asked, head tilted. She froze. There was no presentation. She knew I knew that. And because I didn't push, didn't question her further, didn't take the bait, she didn't know what to do with herself. So I smiled slightly and said, "Well, good luck with that." The relief on her face was almost pathetic. By Thursday, the pattern was unmistakable. Short emotional highs, sudden drops, mood shifts with no apparent trigger, secretive phone calls, messages she refused to read in front of me. And more than anything, guilt. Not the guilt of someone who made a mistake, the guilt of someone who was actively continuing something and terrified of being caught. That evening, I decided to stir the pot gently. She was curled on the couch, texting with the kind of absorbed intensity usually reserved for emergencies. I walked over and sat close enough that she instinctively tilted her phone away from me. She stopped typing altogether, thumb frozen above the screen. "Don't let me interrupt," I said lightly. "You seemed really focused on whatever you were writing." "It's nothing important," she said quickly, hiding the phone behind her leg. "Must be pretty engaging," I replied. "You've been staring at that screen for 20 minutes. She looked at me then, studying my face, trying to read whether I was suspicious. The uncertainty was eating at her, and the longer I stayed calm, the more uneasy she became. "Just catching up with a friend," she said finally. "Anyone I know?" I asked casually. Another pause. Another quick calculation behind her eyes. "I don't think so. Someone from college." "That's nice," I replied, reaching for the TV remote. Always good to reconnect with old friends. The irony nearly made me laugh. She believed she was crafting the perfect deception, the perfect emotional narrative. Meanwhile, I was calmly collecting evidence without saying a word. Friday morning arrived with exactly the tension I expected. She'd been unraveling little by little all week, caught between the thrill of her secret and the fear of exposure. The pressure finally broke through during breakfast. "We should probably talk," she said in the kind of serious tone people use before delivering carefully prepared bad news. "About what?" I asked, not looking up from my eggs. "About us," she said. "Us?" I set down my fork and looked at her, genuinely curious. "What's going on with us?" She hesitated. This wasn't the script she had prepared. She expected me to agree, to say yes, to confirm the narrative she'd spent weeks building that our marriage was crumbling because of my distance, not her actions. "Well, we barely talk anymore," she said weakly. "We're talking right now," I pointed out. "That's not what I mean, and you know it." "Then explain it," I said calmly. "What exactly do you think is wrong?" She floundered. She tried vague emotional statements, broad accusations, open-ended complaints. Each time, I gently redirected her back toward clarity, toward specifics, toward truth. And the closer she got to the truth, the more terrified she looked. By the time she said, "It just feels like we're not connected anymore," I simply nodded and asked, "And whose fault do you think that is?" It was the first moment she truly realized I wasn't playing along. The first moment she understood she no longer controlled the narrative. The first moment she saw the shift in power and couldn't grasp what it meant. That weekend, while she claimed she was shopping with friends, I made calls of my own, quiet ones, strategic ones, to people who'd known us for years, people who might have noticed things I hadn't, my brother, her sister, mutual friends. Piece by piece, a picture formed clearer than anything she'd told me. Clearer than any excuse she'd crafted. She wasn't drifting. She wasn't confused. She wasn't unhappy by accident. She was planning. And she'd been doing it for months. She thought I was the one walking blind. She had no idea how awake I'd become. Tuesday afternoon changed my life in a way I wasn't prepared for, even after the week of warning signs, half-truths, and carefully staged emotional hints. I was supposed to be in Denver until Thursday. The trip had been on my calendar for weeks, she knew that. She'd counted on it, which was why fate deciding to cancel the trip at the last minute felt almost intentional, like someone above had finally grown tired of watching me walk around the edges of the truth. The client's CEO had a family emergency, and by noon the whole meeting was scrapped. I could have called my wife to tell her I'd be coming home early, but something stopped me. A quiet instinct. A voice whispering that coming home unannounced would answer questions I hadn't dared face directly. So I drove home without saying a word. At 3:30 p.m., I turned onto our street and immediately noticed the silver Audi parked across from our driveway. Clean, expensive, out of place. No neighbor owned a car like that. No one in our circle drove one either. I parked inside the garage as usual, my pulse steady, not panicked, not angry, just aware, prepared. Inside, the house was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, the loaded kind that holds a secret in the walls. And then, faintly, I heard them voices from upstairs. Low, too intimate for two people who had no right to be alone together in my bedroom in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. I could have stormed up the stairs. I could have shouted, demanded answers. But reacting emotionally would give her everything she wanted. She'd twist the story, paint it as a one-time lapse, claim confusion, claim we'd been drifting apart. She would cry. And as unfair as it was, the world tends to believe a crying woman over a calm man. So I chose key it instead. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and walked up the stairs slowly, careful not to make a sound. With each step, their voices grew clearer. "He'll be gone until Thursday," she said softly, almost cheerfully. "We have the whole house to ourselves." My jaw clenched not from heartbreak, but from the confirmation, the realization that every phrase from last week had been rehearsed, each one part of a script she'd written to push me toward a decision she wanted me to make for her. "What about after?" the man asked. His voice was deeper than mine, confident in a way that suggested he'd done this before, not the affair itself, but the comfort of stepping into another man's home like it was temporary property. "I'm working on that," she replied. "I've been laying the groundwork for weeks. He's already starting to doubt things. I just need him to be the one who brings up divorce first. Then I can play the reluctant victim." She didn't even sound ashamed. She sounded proud, satisfied, like she was narrating a project that was finally coming together. I stopped outside the bedroom door. It was slightly open, just enough for me to hear every word with nauseating clarity. "What if he doesn't take the bait?" the man asked. "He will," she said. "He's too proud to stay in a marriage where he thinks he's not wanted. I just have to keep pushing until he snaps. Then I get half of everything, and no one blames me." That was when I ended the recording. I didn't need more. I already had enough to expose everything she'd carefully stitched together. But I wasn't done. I opened my camera and captured a silent video through the small gap in the door, just enough to show exactly what was happening inside without any graphic detail. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to humiliate anyone. It was to document the truth she'd been trying so hard to twist. Then I walked back downstairs just as quietly as I'd come up and went into my office. I uploaded the files to a secure cloud account, made backup copies on 2 drives, and locked them inside a cabinet. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Not numb, not shocked. Just clear-headed, in a way I hadn't been in a long time. An hour passed before I heard them come downstairs, her light footsteps, his deeper voice, the front door opening and closing, the Audi starting up. I waited, gave her the time to clean up whatever evidence she thought could betray her. Let her prepare her innocent face for when her husband returned from his out-of-town business trip. 20 minutes later, she walked into the living room where I was sitting with a magazine. "You're home early," she said, her tone light but her eyes wary. "The meeting got canceled," I replied without looking up. "Thought I'd surprise you." "Oh," she said too quickly. "How long have you been here?" "Just walked in," I lied smoothly. "Why? Were you expecting someone?" A tiny pause, barely a second, but in that second I saw her mind race, searching for something safe to say. "No," she whispered. "Just surprised." I nodded, returned to my reading, and let silence fill the space between us. And in that silence, she unraveled. For the next 3 days, she moved like someone waiting for a trap to spring. She watched me watch her, trying to decipher how much I knew. She tried jokes, compliments, coldness, warmth, picking fights, avoiding fights, anything to test the boundaries of my awareness. Every time she tried one of her rehearsed barbs, I agreed with her instead of letting her provoke me. Every time she tried to draw an emotional reaction, I offered none. It drove her deeper and deeper into uncertainty. By Thursday night, desperation finally pushed her into a tactic she hadn't tried before. "I think we should consider couples therapy," she said over dinner, as if the phrase itself could erase the last month. I almost laughed. She spent weeks trying to orchestrate my downfall, and now she was pretending to save the marriage she'd already buried. But I didn't laugh. I simply watched her. She had no idea how much I knew, and no idea how close she was to everything falling apart. Little did she know that the game she'd been playing wasn't one she could win, because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. By Friday morning, the atmosphere in our house had changed so much, it felt like living inside a pressure chamber. She was nervous around me in a way she couldn't hide anymore. Every time I walked into a room, she straightened up like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Every question I asked, no matter how harmless, made her flinch slightly before answering. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know how much I had recorded. She didn't know I had seen everything, but she could feel the shift. Her plan had depended on me reacting emotionally, raising my voice, doubting myself, spiraling into guilt or insecurity. Instead, I was calm, almost too calm for her comfort, and that uncertainty was eating away at her more effectively than any confrontation could have. The next few days were a testing ground. By Saturday morning, she seemed determined to regain control. She tried warm gestures, offering to make breakfast, asking about my work, brushing her hand over my shoulder as she passed behind me. I responded politely, but without warmth, without engagement, without giving her anything to anchor to. That afternoon, she snapped. "You've been acting strange," she said, arms crossed as she stood in the doorway of my office. "Strange how?" "You know how," she insisted. "Distant, detached, too calm. Maybe I'm just seeing things more clearly now." I replied without looking up from my laptop. What does that mean? She pressed. It means exactly what it sounds like. The conversation ended there because she didn't know how to push further without revealing her own fears, and I let her stew in that uncertainty. On Sunday, she tried the opposite approach, picking a fight over something trivial. A comment about dishes left in the sink, a complaint about how I folded laundry, small jabs meant to test whether she could provoke me back into the emotional role she'd written for me. But each time she attacked, I agreed. You're right, I said calmly. I'll fix it. Nothing made her more frustrated. By evening, she seemed exhausted, emotionally drained from all the calculations running through her mind. And I watched her, not with pity, but with a quiet sense of resolve. She had chosen the game. Now she was losing at it. Monday morning was the first major turning point. I met with my attorney. He listened silently as I explained everything. Then I played him the recording, the one of her speaking about how she planned to push me to initiate divorce, to take half of everything while making herself look like the innocent party. When it finished, he leaned back in his chair. She planned this, I said simply. Yes, he replied. But she also made a serious mistake. She documented her intentions out loud, and you recorded it legally. This is damning. What does this mean for the divorce? It means, he said, you're in an extremely strong position. With evidence of premeditation and emotional manipulation, plus what you've implied about possible infidelity, she will not walk away with half. And depending on how this unfolds, she may end up paying your fees. For the first time in weeks, I felt a quiet surge of control, not vindictive, but steady, solid. On Tuesday, I met with our financial planner. What he told me confirmed what I suspected. She'd been moving small amounts of money into a separate account for months. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to build herself a financial cushion without my knowledge. The account was small, but the intention behind it wasn't. Every puzzle piece was sliding into place. By Wednesday afternoon, the picture of her planning was undeniable. Then her sister showed up at my office unannounced. She sat down across from me looking nervous, almost conflicted, as if she felt guilty for being there at all. I think you need to know some things, she said. For 20 minutes, she told me everything. The affair wasn't new. It had been going on for 4 months. The guy wasn't just a trainer. He had a reputation for targeting married women, especially ones with financial stability. And my wife had confided in her sister about preparing emotionally for a future with him. I told her she was making a mistake, her sister said quietly. But she thought she had everything under control. She thought you'd never know, and even if you did, she said you wouldn't be able to prove anything. She paused, looking down for a moment. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't deserve any of this. I thanked her, and I meant it. She didn't owe me the truth, but she gave it anyway. Then Thursday arrived, the day I received the private investigator's full report. Photos, timeline logs, financial records, and a pattern that matched everything her sister had warned me about. The man she was involved with had left a trail of broken marriages behind him, each one following a similar pattern: emotional flattery, secrecy, manipulation, financial gain. Your wife is just the next in line, the investigator said. He's done this 3 times before. By the time evening rolled around, I had a complete understanding of the situation. Not just what happened, but how, why, and with what intentions. That night, she tried one more tactic. She cooked an elaborate dinner, my favorites. She dressed up in a way she hadn't in months. She smiled through the entire meal like she was auditioning for a part she desperately needed. I've been thinking about what you said last week, she said over dessert. Which part? About us being broken, she said softly. I think maybe we can fix this. Her eyes searched mine for hope, for any sign she could regain control of the story she'd been writing. Can we? I asked, keeping my voice even. What would that look like? She launched into a plan: counseling, communication, a vacation, more quality time. It was rehearsed, artificial, and completely disconnected from everything she'd been doing behind my back. When she finished, I set down my fork and nodded. That's an interesting proposal, I said calmly. But I have a better idea. Her hopeful expression flickered. What's that? How about, I said, pulling out my phone. Instead of pretending to fix something you already destroyed, we just move forward honestly. I didn't show her everything. Just one photo, one undeniable piece of truth. She stared at it. And in that moment, I watched the exact second the reality she'd been avoiding finally hit her. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Long enough." She swallowed hard. "What happens now?" "Tomorrow," I said, standing, "you're going to get a very clear answer." She didn't understand it yet, but the game was over. Friday morning arrived with an almost unnatural sense of calm. Not the calm you feel after peace, but the calm that comes right before a storm everyone else thinks they can avoid. She was upstairs getting ready for work, humming to herself in a forced, shaky way that told me she was terrified of what the day might bring. She didn't know exactly what I had, but she knew I had something, and fear fills the gaps of the unknown better than any threat could. While she showered, I made 3 calls, the final pieces of a plan she never thought I could build. My attorney, my accountant, and the private investigator, confirming he was nearby in case I needed a witness. Then I went to the kitchen and prepared the envelope. Thick, heavy, impossible to ignore. Inside were the divorce papers, the asset protection agreements, and a USB drive with every piece of evidence I had collected. It sat on the counter like a fuse waiting for someone to strike a match, but that wasn't the real surprise. No, the real surprise was parked outside. "Could you come downstairs for a minute?" I called up. She walked down, tightening the belt of her bathrobe, her face wired with nervous energy. "What is it?" she asked. Instead of answering, I opened the front door. Her confusion lasted only a second. Then she saw it. The silver Audi parked behind my car, and standing next to it, her trainer, the man she'd planned to leave her marriage for. He looked like he would rather vanish into thin air than be standing in front of our house in broad daylight. But the real punch landed when she saw the second car parked across the street. Her parents' car. Her mother and father sat inside, watching the scene unfold in complete, stunned silence. What is this?" she whispered. "This," I said, stepping aside so she could fully see the gathering outside, "is accountability." She went pale. She knew this was the one thing she couldn't control, truth delivered in front of the exact people she'd hoped would someday see me as the villain. Her trainer cleared his throat nervously. "Look, man, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said calmly. "You're exactly who I thought you were." I took out my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the quiet morning air, discussing how she was laying the groundwork for months, how she needed me to say the word divorce first, how she planned to take half my assets while painting herself as the victim. Then his voice encouraging the manipulation, pushing her toward her exit strategy. Her parents stepped out of the car. Her mother looked heartbroken. Her father looked furious. She grabbed my arm. "Please stop this. We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" I repeated. "Like how you privately planned to end our marriage. Privately moved money into your own account? Privately kept this man in my house while I was gone?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. My parents arrived next, followed by her sister, then 2 of our closest mutual friends. I had called them the night before with just enough information to make sure they'd be here, but not enough to warn her. Everyone she cared about. Everyone she had planned to manipulate. Everyone she assumed would take her side. She tried one last desperate plea. "This is all blown out of proportion." "Really?" I held up the USB drive. "Everything's here. The recordings, the financial documents, the investigator's report." The trainer took a step back, as though he needed to escape the weight of what was coming. "Oh no," I said, blocking his path. "You're not going anywhere. You're part of this story too." He raised his hands. I never promised her anything. She knew what this was. The betrayal on her face was instant and absolute. Her mother covered her mouth. "How could you do this?" she asked her daughter in a trembling voice. "How could you throw everything away for this?" "Mom, you don't understand," her father cut her off sharply. "I understand perfectly. I understand you've been lying to everyone and treating your marriage like it meant nothing." The trainer tried to step around the crowd again, but this time, the private investigator approached. "I'd stay put if I were you," he said softly. "Your pattern is well documented." Her trainer froze. The humiliation on her face would have made me pity her if I hadn't heard her plotting my downfall with my own ears. Instead, I spoke the truth she had tried so hard to twist. "This," I said to the entire group, "is what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness, when they confuse patience with stupidity, when they try to destroy the person who trusted them most." I handed her the envelope. Inside was the end of everything she'd tried so hard to manipulate. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did," I replied. "The documents are filed, and unlike your plan, mine actually worked." I walked back toward the house as her sister murmured, "You did this to yourself." And she had. Every step of it. 3 weeks later, I sat in my home office, my office now reviewing the finalized divorce settlement. Everything had unfolded exactly as my attorney predicted. She received only what the law required for basic needs, nothing more. Her attempt to secure her financial future had turned into the opposite. She lost her job after rumors and evidence circulated. Her trainer disappeared the moment things became complicated. Most of her friends chose distance. Her family remained disappointed and cold toward her. Meanwhile, my life became keter, cleaner, more honest. One evening, my neighbor recently divorced herself, knocked on my door with a casserole as a small gesture of kindness. She stayed for coffee. We talked for over an hour. No games, no rehearsed emotional traps, just two people sharing a moment of real human connection. A month later, we started dating. 6 months later, it felt like a new life had replaced the hollow shell my marriage had become. And then one night, I received a call from an unknown number. Her voice came through, desperate, trembling. "I made a mistake. I know that now. Can we talk?" "No," I said. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I've lost everything." "You didn't lose everything," I replied. "You threw it all away." "I still love you," she sobbed. "No," I said quietly. "You loved what I provided, not me." She tried again. I ended the call, then blocked her number. Sometimes the right choice isn't the one that feels good. It's the one that finally sets you free. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't vengeful. I was done. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally living my own life without manipulation, without deceit, without someone standing beside me while secretly planning my destruction. Some endings aren't tragedies. Sometimes, they're the beginning of who you were always meant to become. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.